I am Angela, I'm mum of 2 from Belfast, and I suffered from postnatal depression after the birth of my daughter. When I was pregnant, she was diagnosed with Down syndrome, and shortly after diagnosed with a heart defect. So all that kind of difficult to take in and difficult to deal with. And after her heart surgery, it kind of really all just hit me at once. It all happened really quickly. We went to our 20-week scan, and there was one marker picked up in the scan, but at the scan we weren't told what that was an indication of. So I left the scan with no idea what it was, what was coming. We were kind of sent home and told, you can Google it if you want, but we wouldn't recommend it. So that was kind of like, to me, a red flag, like, what's going on? So we were referred to fetal medicine, and we went in for the scan and fetal medicine, and within a minute the consultant was talking about Down syndrome and Edwards syndrome and the chances of our baby having this, and I was just kind of like in shock, like, because I wasn't expecting it, because I didn't Google it. We actually made a deal not to Google it, but my husband did Google it so that he could be prepared, which obviously I was very grateful for. She offered me an amniocentesis right there and then, and obviously because I wasn't prepared for any of this, it was just kind of a shock, and I was kind of like, do I want this, do I not want this? But then after a chat with my husband, we were we kind of both made a decision that we couldn't go the rest of the pregnancy not knowing. It was the fear of the unknown for me, so we were like, we'll get the test and then we can be prepared. So I had the amnio there and then, which was not fun, but yeah. And a few days later, on Christmas Eve, we had a phone call to say that our baby had Down syndrome. So when we got that prenatal diagnosis, it was literally a phone call on Christmas Eve. Obviously, at that stage, there wasn't really much else we could do. We weren't given any further information. We had an appointment with the consultant 6 weeks later. And even at that stage, when we went to the appointment, we weren't given any kind of like information. We weren't directed to any charities, any support groups, not even any basic information on what Down syndrome is, what was ahead of us, kind of what we would expect when our daughter was born. And that does lead you to go to Google, which obviously is a very negative and scary place. And for me, being directed to a charity or parents or peers who have went through a similar situation would have been amazing, because you're getting real life experiences from those people. You're not reading medical information on Google that you don't really understand. So after the rest of my pregnancy, after the diagnosis, there was a good few weeks where everything was kind of up and down. Like, I was having real down days, real negative days. I actually remember going out one day about 4 or 5 days after the diagnosis with my son, and went to the supermarket and was walking up and down the baby aisle and just couldn't bring myself to buy clothes for the baby. The excitement was gone, and I literally left the supermarket and pushed him in his pram the whole way home, trying not to cry. Got into the house and just completely lost it. And my husband was just like, it's okay, like, it's all part of the process. Like, there's obviously going to be negative thoughts that creep into your head, but that's just your way of dealing with it. You're getting all those thoughts out there, and you're kind of just learning to deal with the diagnosis. But I think the real turning point for me then was a few weeks later, we had an appointment with a fetal cardiologist, and we found out that Nora would have a large hole in her heart when she was born. So at that stage, that kind of took over everything. The worry now was, there's something wrong with her heart that needs to be fixed, and that became our sole focus then. I think for a long time I was just kind of in not autopilot, but just focusing on keeping Nora well, because we were told so many things, like if you were to bring her out and she was to catch like a common cold, it could land her in hospital, it'd be very dangerous for her heart. She had a lot of feeding issues, so she was fed via NG tube coming up to her surgery because she was so tired and weak and she couldn't drink a bottle. So all that kind of kept me occupied. It was more than after surgery, about 4 or 5 weeks after surgery, it all just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think that was then where I realised, hold on a minute, what have I just been through? And I think that's the moment I realised, right, something's not right here. So after we got her heart diagnosis and knew that she was going to have open heart surgery, there wasn't a lot of support. There was one cardiac nurse. She was there from the start, from the day we got our diagnosis right through till Nora got her surgery. She was in constant contact with me. She did actually offer to introduce me to other parents who had went through it or were going through it, but at that stage I think I was just kind of like, no, I need to deal with this on my own. And I think it was more, probably a lot of it was, I was afraid to know what was to come. So I didn't want to get in touch with another family whose child had went through the surgery or was about to go through the surgery, because I was afraid. I didn't want to know what was ahead of us. I think it was just kind of living in the moment, thinking, just get through this day, and eventually the surgery will come, and then you'll deal with it when you have to deal with it. So at that point, yes, I did have that nurse who I was in contact with, but there was no other real support. So after her surgery and it all kind of came to a head, and it just really hit me at once, I reached out. There's a charity called the Children's Heartbeat Trust, and they offer counselling service for heart families throughout the north. So I reached out to them and got free counselling sessions. I also went to my GP at that stage, and the GP was just kind of like, at the start, have you thought about medication? And at that stage I was thinking, like, it's too soon to even start thinking about that. Like, I want to go to the counselling and see how it is, and then maybe address it further down the line. The counselling was really helpful. I think I did maybe 2 or 3 sessions and then had a break, and then COVID hit. So I did get the rest of the sessions on the phone, but it was it wasn't the same as being face to face and having that conversation. So when I reached out for support from the GP, I think I would have liked to have been referred to some kind of counselling service, or just some way that, even a charity, a support group, something that is more of a long-term solution, as opposed to have some medication and hopefully that'll work. Because yes, medication can obviously help, but it's just gonna hide the symptoms to me, where I knew I needed to address those. Like, obviously I had a lot of negative thoughts throughout my pregnancy. I struggled obviously after the heart surgery, and I kind of wanted to get all that out and kind of offload it, and just get my thoughts out there and have someone tell me that yes, this is completely normal. Like, what you're thinking, what you're feeling is all completely normal. So my partner wasn't offered any support at all. Obviously the cardiac nurse was in constant contact with me, but wasn't actually in contact with my husband. No one really reached out to him to see how he was coping. He had to be the strong one. In his eyes, he was the strong one. Like, he was amazing. Like, he kept me going. But no, he wasn't offered any kind of support. So I actually just went and looked for some groups myself. So there was some great Facebook groups that I'm still part of, Positive About Down Syndrome, and there's actually a Down Syndrome charity here in Belfast where it's a local support group. I also reached out to the We Are Panks group. I found those really useful, because I was able to just, if I had a question, I was able to go onto those groups and ask it, and I was getting real life advice, like people who had lived through it, who were able to offer me the practical advice. And I found that really helpful. What does life look like for me now? Crazy. Nora is an absolute maniac. She's always up to mischief, but she's absolutely brilliant. Like, all the fears I had for what she would achieve and what she would do, she's just blown them out of the water. Like, she's absolutely amazing. Her determination is something else. Like, she was home a week after having heart surgery. She smiled the whole way through it in the hospital. a day after heart surgery, she was lying smiling to the nurses, and I was just thinking to myself, if that was me, I would not be smiling right now. But she is a fierce little girl, and she has so much determination, and she's kind of shown me that she can achieve anything. Advice I would give a parent going through similar is reach out to other parents. I was hesitant at the start because I didn't want to see what my future was. It's hard to imagine. I was still pregnant, and I didn't want to go into a group and see kids who were struggling or kids who were doing brilliant, because it's hard to imagine what your life is going to look like, and every child is different. And I've been told that a million times and thought, right, okay, like the Down syndrome is going to have some kind of impact, but it is true. Like, there's so many different children out there, and it's amazing seeing what they're achieving. And yeah, reach out to other parents and just get real life experience, because there's only so much medical professionals can tell you. Like, they can't tell you what it's like day to day living with your child. They can tell you, oh yes, they might have a heart problem, or they might have eyesight problems, they might have a developmental delay, but they don't see all the other things, all the amazing things that come with it. And I think that's what helped me. If I could give a message to health professionals, direct parents to support. As I say, throughout my pregnancy, after our diagnosis, I wasn't given one leaflet, one bit of information about a support group or someone I could talk to. And there's so many parents here that are willing to be a contact. So if you were to get a diagnosis, they could say, here's a parent you can get in touch with who will help you, answer your questions, give you a face. There was nothing, like not even a leaflet. And that's a big thing for me, is not being directed to the right support.